Elena Vasquez walked down the long hallway toward the council chamber. Her black shoes clicked on the smooth metal floor. The walls around her were made of some kind of crystal that glowed with soft blue light. Everything on Nexus Prime looked expensive and advanced. It made her feel small. She carried a datapad in her hand. On it were the stories she would tell today. Stories about human wars. Stories about battles and sacrifice. Stories that had shaped her species for thousands of years. The doors to the chamber opened without a sound. Elena stepped inside and looked up at the 12 seats arranged in a circle above her. Each seat held a different alien species. Each one more powerful than Earth could ever dream of being. In the highest seat sat Zarfik of the hegemony. His people ruled over 50 star systems. His body was tall and thin, covered in gray skin that looked like metal. His eyes glowed red. When he looked down at her, Elena had learned this meant he was bored. To his left floated a ball of pure light. This was the Luminar representative. The Luminar were beings made of energy. They had no bodies like humans did. When they spoke, their light pulsed in different colors. Elena had studied their language for months, but still found it hard to understand. The collective occupied 3 seats, but they were really one mind split between many bodies. The 3 creatures looked like giant insects with too many arms. When one spoke, all 3 moved their mouths at the same time. Their voices created a strange harmony that made Elena's skin crawl. Other aliens filled the remaining seats. The snake-like Yulari who could see through time. The crystal beings called Zephyrians who could bend reality with their thoughts. The plant people known as the Verdant who had lived for millions of years. Elena took her place at the small podium. In the center of the chamber, above her, the aliens looked down like gods judging a mortal. She had done this before, but it never got easier. Council members, Elena began, her voice echoing in the huge chamber. Today I will share stories from human military history. These tales show how my people have fought and survived throughout our existence. A sound came from above. It took Elena a moment to realize what it was. Laughter. The Luminar was pulsing with bright yellow light. In their language, this meant amusement. Please continue, little human, Zarthik said. His voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. We are curious about your tribal conflicts. Elena felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her face calm. She touched her datapad and began. 300 warriors from the city of Sparta stood against an army of 100,000 Persians at a place called Thermopylae, she said. They knew they would die. They went anyway. How primitive, whispered one of the collective. Why not simply surrender? Elena continued. The Spartans held the narrow pass for 3 days. They killed thousands of enemies before they finally fell. Their sacrifice gave their people time to prepare for the larger war. Wasteful, said the Zephyrian representative. Its crystal body rang like a bell when it spoke. Advanced beings would have used tactical displacement or temporal manipulation. Elena moved to the next story. During what we call World War II, the city of Stalingrad was surrounded by enemy forces. The people had no food. They ate rats and leather to survive. Soldiers fought for single buildings for months. In the end, they won. The verdant representative, an enormous tree-like being, rustled its leaves in what Elena had learned was their version of a sigh. Your species seems obsessed with suffering unnecessarily. Why not simply relocate the population? Because some things are worth fighting for, Elena replied. More laughter from the Luminar. This time other council members joined in. The sound filled the chamber like the buzzing of angry insects. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she told the next story. On August 6, 1945, humans dropped a nuclear weapon on the city of Hiroshima. 70,000 people died instantly. 3 days later, we dropped another on Nagasaki. The war ended soon after. Silence fell over the chamber. Finally, Zarthik spoke. You destroyed your own species to end a conflict? We destroyed our enemies to save more lives, Elena corrected. Barbaric, said one of the collective. Truly primitive thinking. Elena told more stories. The Siege of the Alamo, the Charge of the Light Brigade, D-Day, Vietnam, Afghanistan. Each tale brought more dismissive comments from above. Your people seem incapable of logical warfare, the Yulari representative said, its forked tongue flicking. Out to taste the air, always choosing the difficult path. We choose the necessary path, Elena replied. How quaint, Zarthik said. Tell me, human, what is the largest army your species has ever assembled? Elena checked her datapad. Operation Barbarossa involved over 4 million soldiers. Laughter exploded from the council. The luminar pulsed so brightly that Elena had to shield her eyes. 4 million? Zarthik said, his red eyes glowing brighter. I personally command a fleet of 50 billion automated warriors. The collective can field entire worlds as soldiers. Yet they are still just stories to us, Elena said quietly. Indeed, said the Zephyrian, amusing tales of primitive violence. Like watching children play with sticks. Elena felt anger rising in her chest, but she pushed it down. She had one more story to tell. In 1962, the world came close to nuclear war. American and Soviet ships faced each other in the Caribbean Sea. One submarine captain had to decide whether to launch a nuclear torpedo. He chose not to. That decision may have saved our entire species. And you call this warfare? Asked the verdant, one being making a choice. Sometimes the greatest battles are fought inside a single mind, Elena said. Zarthik leaned forward in his seat. Human Vasquez, these stories are certainly entertaining. We shall file them under Category 7. Elena knew what that meant. Category 7 was for primitive cultures, stories told around campfires, fairy tales, and myths. Is there anything else you wish to share? Zarthik asked. Elena looked up at the 12 species that ruled the galaxy. Each one controlled technology that could destroy star systems. Each one commanded forces beyond human imagination. Each one looked at her like she was a curious pet. No, she said finally. That concludes my presentation. Excellent, Zarthik. Sighed, most amusing. Council dismissed. Elena gathered her datapad and walked toward the exit. Behind her, she could hear the aliens talking among themselves. Words like primitive and barbaric followed her down the hallway. As the chamber doors closed behind her, Elena allowed herself a small smile. Let them laugh at human stories. Let them think humans were weak and primitive. She hoped they would never need to learn the difference between a story and a warning. 6 months had passed since Elena's presentation to the Galactic Council. She sat in her small office on Nexus Prime, reviewing reports from Earth's colonies when the emergency alarm began to sound. The crystal walls around her flashed red, and voices echoed through the station's communication system. All council members report to the emergency chamber immediately. Priority Alpha situation detected. Elena grabbed her jacket and ran toward the council chamber. The hallways filled with aliens moving in the same direction. She had never seen them move so fast before. The collective representatives were chittering to each other in their strange harmony. Even the usually calm Zephyrians seemed agitated, their crystal bodies ringing with sharp, nervous tones. The chamber doors slammed open as Elena arrived. The 12 council members were already in their seats, but their usual air of superiority was gone. Zarthik's red eyes blazed brighter than Elena had ever seen them. The luminar representative pulsed with colors she had never witnessed before, deep purples and angry oranges that hurt to look at. The situation is critical, Zarthik announced without his usual formal opening. Long-range sensors have detected an approaching fleet from beyond the galactic rim. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. Elena gasped when she saw it. Hundreds of dark shapes moved through space toward their galaxy. The ships looked wrong somehow. They seemed to bend light around them, making them hard to focus on. "We have identified the fleet," continued Zarthik. "They are the Devourers." A chill ran down Elena's spine. Every species in the galaxy knew that name from their ancient histories. The Devourers had almost destroyed galactic civilization millions of years ago. They consumed entire worlds, eating every living thing they could find. Most people thought they were extinct. "How is this possible?" asked the verdant representative, its massive trunk creaking with worry. "The Devourers were defeated eons ago." "Apparently not," said one of the collective. "Our analysis shows their technology has advanced far beyond what our ancestors faced. Their ships phase through normal matter. Their weapons tear holes in space itself." Elena studied the holographic ships. They moved in patterns that made no sense. Some seemed to be in multiple places at once. Others appeared and disappeared like ghosts. "What do they want?" Elena asked. The Yulari representative flicked its tongue nervously. "The same thing they always wanted. To feed, they consume organic matter on a massive scale. Entire ecosystems disappear when they arrive." Zarthik stood up in his seat. "We must organize our defenses immediately. The hegemony will lead the military response. Our dreadnought fleet is the largest in the galaxy. The Zephyrian Collective will provide reality manipulation technology," announced the crystal being. "We can bend space-time to create barriers." "The Collective offers perfect coordination," said all three insect-like creatures at once. "Our hive mind can control millions of ships without confusion." Other species began volunteering their forces. The Luminar promised energy weapons that could destroy planets. The Verdant offered bioships that could repair themselves in battle. Even the smaller species contributed what they could. Elena waited for her turn to speak. When there was finally a pause, she stood up. "Earth would like to contribute to the defense," she said. The chamber fell silent. Zarthik looked down at her with what might have been pity. "Human Vasquez, we appreciate the offer, but your technology is incompatible with our defense systems." "Our ships use chemical propulsion," added the Zephyrian. "Your weapons are simple. Kinetic projectiles. They would be useless against Devourer technology." Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. "We have over 200 ships ready for combat." 200? The Luminar pulsed with mild amusement. "The hegemony alone has 50,000 vessels. Your contribution would be insignificant." "Perhaps Earth's fleet could assist with refugee evacuation," suggested one of the collective. "Moving civilians away from combat zones." Elena's hands clenched into fists. "We want to fight. And we want you to survive," Zarthik said in a tone that made it clear the discussion was over. "Your species is too valuable to lose in a battle you cannot win." The council began making detailed plans. They would meet the Devourers at the Kepler defense line, a fortress system that guarded the galaxy's core worlds. Massive fleets would gather there. The greatest military minds would coordinate the battle. Elena sat in her small chair and listened to the aliens plan their war. They spoke of ships the size of moons and weapons that could crack planets in half. They discussed strategies that involved manipulating time and space itself. Not once did they ask for human input. Hours passed as the council worked out the details. Finally, Zarthik dismissed the session. "We will meet again in 12 hours for final preparations. Each species should prepare their finest warriors and most advanced weapons. This will be the greatest battle in galactic history." Elena stood to leave, but Zarthik called her name. "Human Vasquez, please remain." The other aliens filed out of the chamber, leaving alone with the hegemony leader. He floated down from his high seat to hover at her eye level. "I want you to understand our decision," he said. "This is not about human courage or determination. Your people have shown they possess both. This is about simple physics. The Devourers use technology we barely understand. They exist partially outside our reality. Primitive weapons cannot touch them. Alina looked into his glowing red eyes. You're probably right. I am right, Zarthik said. But I also want you to know that if we fail, Earth will be among the first worlds they reach. Make whatever preparations you can. Alina nodded. We will. Zarthik returned to his seat. You may go. Alina walked out of the chamber and down the long hallway to her office. The crystal walls no longer seemed beautiful. They seemed fragile, like everything else in the galaxy. She sat at her desk and opened a secure communication channel to Earth. The message she sent was short. Council has excluded us from the defense fleet. Implement Broken Arrow Protocol immediately. Prepare all colonies. This is not a drill. Elena leaned back in her chair and stared out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Devourers were coming. The greatest military forces in Galactic history were preparing to stop them. She hoped the aliens were right about their superior technology. But if they were wrong, if their advanced weapons and reality-bending tricks failed, then the galaxy would need a different kind of solution. The kind of solution that humans had been perfecting for thousands of years. Elena opened her datapad and began reviewing the files she had presented to the Council 6 months ago. Stories of Thermopylae and Stalingrad. Tales of sacrifice and determination. Accounts of people who chose to do terrible things because someone had to do them. The aliens had laughed at those stories. They had called them primitive and barbaric. Elena hoped they would never understand why she wasn't laughing now. The battle at the Kepler defense line began at dawn on the 4th day after the emergency council meeting. Elena watched from the observation deck of Nexus Prime as reports flooded in from the front lines. The greatest military force in Galactic history had assembled to face the Devourers. 5,000 hegemony dreadnoughts formed the main battle line. Each ship was the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons that could shatter asteroids. Behind them floated the Zephyrian reality. Ships, vessels that existed in multiple dimensions at once. The collective had brought 10 million fighter craft, all controlled by their perfect hive mind. Elena studied the tactical displays with growing unease. The alien fleet looked impressive on paper, but something about the Devourer formations made her nervous. The enemy ships moved in patterns that hurt to look at, appearing and disappearing like mirages. First contact in 30 seconds, announced the communications officer. A blue-skinned Alterian with too many arms. Elena held her breath as the two fleets closed the distance. The hegemony opened fire first, sending streams of energy that could burn through planet cores. The beams struck the Devourer ships and simply vanished, as if they had hit nothing at all. What just happened? Elena asked. The Alterian's 4 hands danced over his control panel. The energy weapons passed through the enemy vessels without effect. They appear to be partially phased out of our reality. The Devourers returned fire. Their weapons looked like tears in space itself, black rifts that swallowed light. When these tears touched the hegemony dreadnoughts, the massive ships simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not exploded. Gone. Elena watched in horror as ship after ship vanished from the tactical display. In minutes, half the hegemony fleet had disappeared into the hungry darkness. Zephyrian ships are engaging, the communications officer reported. The crystal beings tried their reality-bending technology, creating walls of folded space to protect the remaining fleet. For a moment, it seemed to work. The Devourer weapons struck the barriers and were deflected. Then the enemy adapted. New rifts opened, not in space but in the barriers themselves. The Zephyrian defenses crumbled like glass. Their beautiful crystal ships shattered and fell dark. Collective fighters are moving to attack formation, the officer said. But his voice shook now. Elena knew about the collective battle doctrine. 10 Millions small, fast ships controlled by one perfect mind. No confusion, no miscommunication, no hesitation. It should have been unstoppable. The fighters swarmed toward the Devourer fleet like angry insects. Then the enemy activated something new. A pulse of energy spread out from their ships, and suddenly the collective fighters began attacking each other. What's happening to them? Elena demanded. Psychic interference, the officer gasped. The enemy is scrambling their hive mind connection. They can't tell friend from enemy anymore. Elena watched the collective destroy themselves in mindless confusion. Ships that had worked in perfect harmony now tore each other apart. In less than an hour, the greatest coordination in galactic history had become chaos. The other species tried to help. The luminar energy beings threw themselves at the Devourers, hoping their non-physical nature would protect them. The enemy simply absorbed them, growing brighter and stronger with each captured being. The verdant bioships attempted to overwhelm the Devourers with sheer numbers. Their living vessels could heal themselves and adapt to enemy attacks, but the Devourer weapons didn't just destroy the ships. They consumed them, turning the organic matter into more enemy vessels. One by one, the pride of galactic civilization fell. Species that had ruled the stars for millions of years found their technology useless against an enemy that existed partially outside reality itself. Elena received a priority message on her personal communicator. It was from Admiral Chun, commander of Earth's small fleet. Ambassador, we're receiving retreat orders from the Council. What are our instructions? Elena looked at the tactical display. Less than 10% of the galactic fleet remained. Those ships were scattered and fleeing in panic. The Devourers advanced steadily toward the core worlds, leaving nothing but empty space behind them. Follow the retreat orders, Elena told Chun, but implement Broken Arrow standby. All colonies, all stations, everything. Understood, Ambassador. Broken Arrow standby confirmed. The communications officer turned to Elena with fear in his alien eyes. Ambassador Vasquez, we're receiving an emergency summons from the Council. They want to see you immediately. Elena walked through corridors filled with panicking aliens. The crystal walls flickered with emergency lighting. Everywhere she looked, she saw species that had considered themselves masters of the galaxy reduced to frightened refugees. The council chamber was chaos when she arrived. Only 8 of the 12 species remained. The others had been destroyed or were too busy evacuating to attend. Zarthik's red eyes burned with desperate fury. The situation is critical, he announced without waiting for formal procedures. Our conventional defenses have failed completely. We need alternatives. Perhaps we should negotiate, suggested the surviving verdant representative. Find out what they want. They want to eat everything, snapped one of the remaining collective. There is no negotiating with hunger itself. Elena stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by species that had once looked down on her. Now they stared at her with something that might have been hope. Human Vasquez, Zarthik said, your species has studied warfare for its entire existence. Do you have any suggestions? Elena felt the weight of the galaxy settling on her shoulders. These beings had dismissed human military history as primitive entertainment. Now they were asking her to save them. She thought about the story she had told them 6 months ago. Tales of desperate last stands and impossible victories. Stories of people who chose to do terrible things because someone had to do them. I have a question for the council, Elena said quietly. Ask it, Zarthik demanded. Elena looked up at the 8 surviving species. Representatives of civilizations that spanned millions of years and countless star systems. Beings who commanded technology that could reshape reality itself. How many worlds are you willing to sacrifice to stop them? The chamber fell silent. Elena could hear the hum of the station's life support systems and the distant sound of evacuation ships launching. Finally, The Zephyrian representative spoke. What do you mean by sacrifice? Elena opened her datapad and called up a file marked Broken Arrow Protocol. Her hands were steady as she prepared to explain humanity's solution to an impossible problem. I mean exactly what I said, she replied. How many worlds are you willing to sacrifice to stop them? Elena stood in the center of the council chamber as 8 alien species stared down at her. The silence stretched on for long moments. Finally, Zarthik spoke. Explain what you mean by sacrifice, human. Elena touched her datapad and activated the holographic display. A map of the galaxy appeared, showing the approaching Devourer fleet and the populated worlds in their path. The Devourers need organic matter to survive, Elena began. They consume living worlds to fuel their ships and feed their armies. Without that fuel, they become vulnerable. This we already know, said the verdant representative impatiently. What is your point? Elena's finger moved across the display, highlighting world after world in the enemy's path. We deny them that fuel. We destroy every world they approach before they can reach it. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. The collective chittered in harmony while the Zephyrian's crystal body rang like a broken bell. You're talking about genocide, gasped the Luminar representative, its light pulsing with horrified colors. Billions of lives on each world. I'm talking about survival, Elena replied calmly. The Devourers are advancing through the outer rim territories. 47 inhabited worlds lie in their direct path to the core systems. We evacuate what populations we can, then sterilize the planets completely. Zarthik leaned forward in his seat. How do you propose to destroy entire worlds? It would take our most advanced planet crackers weeks to render a world uninhabitable. Elena called up another file on her display. We don't need to crack the planets. We just need to make them useless to the Devourers. The display showed technical specifications that made several council members gasp. Simple fusion devices, thousands of them, placed strategically across planetary surfaces. Nuclear bombardment, Elena explained. Every human colony, every station, every outpost has been quietly equipped with fusion warheads. We can render a world radioactive and lifeless within hours. This is barbaric, whispered one of the collective. You would poison entire ecosystems. Better poisoned than devoured, Elena said. A radioactive world can recover in a few thousand years. A world consumed by the Devourers is gone forever. The Yulari representative flicked its tongue nervously. Even if this plan could work, the logistics are impossible. How do you coordinate the destruction of dozens of worlds simultaneously? Elena's expression didn't change. We've been planning this since we joined the galactic community. Every human settlement has sealed orders. When I transmit the activation code, they will carry out their instructions without question. You mean your people will willingly destroy their own worlds? The Zephyrian's voice rang with disbelief. They understand the necessity, Elena replied. Humans have always been willing to make hard choices when survival is at stake. Zarthik studied the tactical display. Show us the projected path of the Devourer advance. Elena highlighted the enemy fleet's movement. They're following the spiral arm, consuming worlds in order of their organic density. New Harmony will be first. 2 billion inhabitants, mostly agricultural colonies. You would murder 2 billion people? The Luminar pulsed with angry red light. I would save 2 trillion, Elena answered. If the Devourers reach the core worlds, every civilization in the galaxy dies. Sometimes you have to choose between bad and worse. The council members began arguing among themselves. Some called Elena's plan monstrous. Others pointed out that they had no alternatives. The debate raged for hours while evacuation ships continued to flee from the advancing enemy. Finally, Zarthik called for silence. Human Vasquez, this broken arrow protocol of yours How certain are you that it will work? Elena considered the question carefully. The Devourers need organic matter to sustain their advance. Without it, their fleet will begin to starve. Intelligence suggests they're operating at the edge of their supply lines already. A systematic denial of resources should force them to withdraw or seek sustenance elsewhere. Should, repeated the verdant representative. You're asking us to commit genocide based on should. I'm asking you to make a choice, Elena said. Fight them with conventional weapons and watch every world burn, or fight them with unconventional methods and save what we can. One of the collective stood up. There must be another way, some technology we haven't considered. The Devourers just destroyed fleets that controlled reality itself, Elena pointed out. They consumed energy beings and turned living ships against themselves. What technology do you think we've overlooked? The chamber fell quiet again. Elena could see the terrible logic working in their alien minds. They had tried everything there. Advanced civilizations could offer. Only humanity's primitive solution remained. Zarthik finally spoke. If we authorize this protocol, how quickly can you implement it? Elena checked her chronometer. New Harmony falls within 18 hours, according to current projections. I can have the bombardment ready in 6. And the population? Evacuation ships are already en route. We can save perhaps 10%. The numbers hung in the air like a death sentence. 90% of New Harmony's population would die to save the galaxy. Council will vote, Zarthik announced. All in favor of authorizing the human broken arrow protocol? One by one, hands and appendages rose around the chamber. Not quickly, not eagerly, but with the weight of species that had run out of options. Vote was unanimous. Elena nodded and activated her communicator. Admiral Chun, this is Ambassador Vasquez. Authorization code Omega 77 Alpha. Execute Broken Arrow Protocol on New Harmony. 18-hour countdown starts now. Confirmed, Ambassador. Broken Arrow authorized for New Harmony. Elena closed the channel and looked up at the alien council members. Many of them couldn't meet her eyes. It's done, she said simply. Zarthik's red glow dimmed. May whatever gods you believe in forgive us all. Elena picked up her datapad and walked toward the chamber exit. At the door, she turned back. You asked me once about human warfare, she said. About why we tell stories of sacrifice and hard choices. This is why. Because someone has to be willing to do what's necessary, even when it's terrible. She left the council chamber and walked to the observation deck. Through the transparent walls, she could see the stars. Somewhere out there, New Harmony was preparing. To die. Elena thought about the human stories she had shared with the council. Tales of Thermopylae and Hiroshima. Stories about people who made impossible choices, because someone had to make them. The aliens had laughed at those stories once. They had called them primitive and barbaric. They weren't laughing anymore. Elena stood at the command center of Nexus Prime, watching the countdown timer for New Harmony. 17 hours, 43 minutes, 12 seconds. Around her, alien officers worked at their stations with quiet desperation. No one spoke about what was coming. The evacuation reports came in steadily. Transport ships fleeing New Harmony with whatever refugees they could carry. Elena did the math in her head. 200,000 people saved out of 2 billion. The rest would stay behind to activate the nuclear devices or simply had nowhere to run. Admiral Chun on Priority Channel, announced the communications officer. Elena accepted the transmission. Chun's weathered face appeared on her screen, broadcasting from the bridge of the human flagship Indomitable. Ambassador, our fleet is in position around New Harmony. All fusion devices are armed and ready. Countdown proceeding as scheduled, Elena nodded. Any problems with the civilian population? Chun's expression darkened. Some resistance at first. Riots in 3 major cities. But the local governors explained the situation. Most people understand now. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. They understand they're going to die. They understand they're going to save the galaxy. Chun replied, "The evacuation ships took the children first. The adults who stayed behind are volunteers. Volunteers." Elena almost laughed at the word. As if there was really a choice. Devourer fleet status? She asked, 12 hours out from New Harmony. They're not trying to hide anymore. Our sensors show they're already preparing their feeding apparatus. Elena cut the transmission and returned to watching the tactical displays. The Devourer fleet moved through space like a disease, leaving empty systems behind them. Soon they would reach New Harmony and find only poisoned rock. 6 hours before the bombardment, Elena received an urgent message from the Galactic Council, emergency session. She found the remaining alien representatives huddled together in the chamber like frightened children. "We've been monitoring Devourer communications," Zarthik announced without preamble. "They know about New Harmony's evacuation. They're suspicious." Elena felt her heart skip. How suspicious? The Zephyrian representative answered, "They're sending scout ships ahead of the main fleet. If they detect the nuclear devices before detonation, they might change course." "Then we detonate early," Elena said. "The evacuations aren't complete," protested the Luminar. "There are still 300,000 people on the planet." Elena looked around the chamber at the 8 surviving species. "Do you want to save 300,000 people or 300 trillion? No one answered. Elena activated her communicator. "Admiral Chun, new orders. Accelerate bombardment schedule. Detonate in 4 hours. Confirmed, Ambassador." The chamber fell silent. Elena could hear her own heartbeat in the stillness. 4 hours later, Elena watched New Harmony die. The fusion devices detonated simultaneously across the planet's surface. Brilliant flashes of light consumed cities and farmlands and forests. The planet's blue-green atmosphere turned orange, then red, then black. In minutes, a world that had taken millions of years to evolve became a radioactive wasteland. Elena's hands were steady as she watched 2 billion people vanish in nuclear fire. Around her, alien officers wept or prayed or simply stared in horror. But Elena felt nothing except cold satisfaction. The first step was complete. "Devourer scouts are approaching the system," reported the communications officer. Elena watched the enemy ships drop out of hyperspace near New Harmony. They scanned the dead world for several minutes, then began transmitting back to their fleet. "There." "Confused," the officer said. "The scouts are reporting that New Harmony shows no organic signatures. They think it's a natural disaster." The main Devourer fleet arrived 6 hours later. Elena watched them surround the poisoned planet, searching for the rich organic matter their sensors had detected days before. Finding nothing, they began to move toward the next system on their list. "Kepler 7, Elena said into her communicator. "You have 12 hours to evacuate. Bombardment will commence on schedule." One by one, the worlds fell. Kepler 7, Rigel Station. The agricultural colonies of the Centauri cluster. Each planet died in nuclear fire before the Devourers could reach it. Each world denied the enemy the fuel they needed to sustain there. Advanced out by the 6th bombardment, the alien council members could no longer watch. They retreated to their quarters, leaving Elena alone at the command center. She stood at her post for 72 hours straight, ordering the deaths of world after world with mechanical precision. The strategy worked exactly as Elena had predicted. The Devourer fleet began to slow as their bioships grew hungry. Without fresh organic matter to consume, their living vessels started to weaken. Some ships simply died and drifted in space. Others turned on each other in cannibalistic feeding frenzies. After the 10th world burned, the Devourers changed course. They abandoned their advance toward the galactic core and began seeking easier prey in the outer spiral arms. But Elena was ready for them. All colonies in sectors 12 through 18. She broadcast on emergency channels. Implement Broken Arrow immediately. Do not wait for direct orders. The bombardment spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Human colonies destroyed themselves rather than feed the enemy. Entire star systems became graveyards of poisoned worlds. The Devourers found nothing but death wherever they turned. 3. Weeks after New Harmony burned, the enemy fleet finally broke. The surviving Devourer ships retreated beyond the galactic rim. Their invasion crushed not by superior weapons, but by humanity's willingness to destroy everything rather than surrender. Elena stood in the council chamber one last time. Only 6 alien species remained active in galactic government. The others were too devastated by the war to participate. The chamber felt empty and cold. The immediate threat has passed, Zarthik announced. The Devourer fleet has withdrawn. To unknown space, Elena nodded. Our long-range sensors confirm they've left the galaxy entirely. At what cost? Whispered the verdant representative. 47 worlds destroyed. 50 billion lives lost. 50 billion lives sacrificed to save 300 trillion, Elena corrected. The mathematics are simple. The luminar pulsed with dim, sad colors. How do you live with such choices, human? Elena thought about the question. How did she live with ordering the deaths of entire worlds? How did any human live with the terrible things their species had done throughout history? We tell stories, she said finally. We remember what happened and why it was necessary. We make sure future generations understand the price of survival. Zarthik leaned forward. The Council has discussed your actions during the crisis. We are prepared to offer humanity a permanent position as Supreme Military Coordinator of the Galactic Defense Forces. Elena wasn't surprised. The aliens had learned what humans were capable of when pushed to the edge. They would never again dismiss human warfare as primitive entertainment. I accept, Elena said. She left the chamber and walked to her new office. In the military complex, the walls were still crystal, but they no longer seemed beautiful. They seemed fragile, like everything else in the galaxy. Elena sat at her desk and opened a new file on her computer. She began typing a report about the Devourer War, carefully documenting every decision and every cost. Future humans would need to understand what had happened here. At the end of the report, she added a personal note. The galaxy is safe for now, but threats will come again. When they do, someone must be ready to make the hard choices. Someone must be willing to do terrible things because they are necessary. Today, that someone was us. Elena saved the file and leaned back in her chair. Through her window, she could see the stars. Somewhere out there, 47 worlds lay dead because of her orders. 50 billion people had died because she had chosen to save everyone else. The aliens had laughed at human stories once. Stories of war and sacrifice and impossible choices. They would never laugh at those stories again.